Welcome back to Carrion Creature Feature. I'm Jeramy Burke-Miller, and tonight's story takes us on an extended vacation of nightmarish proportions. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow so you can be notified of our latest stories. Now, sit back, reserve your first-class ticket, and pack your sunscreen. This trip is going to be a killer.
Burning Surf by Shane H. Sellers. We can live beside the ocean, leave the fire behind, swim out past the breakers, watch the world die. Everclear. 1. Morning sunlight beamed through the windows of the third-story office as Dr. Rosenberg sat in his recliner looking up at me from his notepad before speaking. "How have you been, Andrew?" "I guess I feel better." In truth, it had been 6 months since the incident, and the nightmares and panic attacks were still a regular occurrence. "You know, Andrew, you're lucky. When I look at you, I don't see a victim. I see a survivor," Dr. Rosenberg said as he typed into his notepad. I didn't feel lucky. In fact, I felt miserable. $300 a session, and I could have gotten the same advice from a bartender. Lucky? Dr. Rosenberg relaxed in his recliner, setting the notepad aside. "Andrew, you're in excellent shape, both mentally and physically. The law office continues to pay a full salary while you recover. You have a nice apartment, a stable career path, and plenty of opportunities to socialize. So I think you're very lucky considering the condition of other patients I work with. I'm not downplaying the trauma you endured. I just think you're strong enough to move past this." A sour, bitter taste formed in my mouth as the coffee I drank earlier found its way back into my throat. I swallowed hard, the reflux burning my chest as it went back down. There was a silence in the office as I contemplated his words, my eyes resting on a magazine with clear blue water on the front. Taking the magazine in hand, I thumbed through the pages, stopping on a portrait of a man with tan, leathery skin, surfing. The photographer had captured the wave in mid-motion as the morning sun crested the horizon. I could practically smell the sunscreen and brine mixed with the excitement of the moment. "That's Dr. Gregory Orton, a fellow colleague of mine. He's been surfing for almost 10 years now, I think. He swears by it. Says that surfing clears his head and keeps him young." "Where does he surf?" I asked, my eyes still lost within the pages. "All over, but mostly in Hawaii. He's talked about opening a practice up there for years." I studied the page, feeling a freedom surfacing inside of me the longer I looked. There was something hypnotic about the crystal clear water. Something that whispered, everything will be okay, and everything will be as it should. "I see that magazine is resonating with you. Why don't you take it? You might just find a new hobby," Dr. Rosenberg said with a smile. I nodded in agreement, setting the magazine down by my side and refocusing on the doctor. The rest of the session went as all the others. Dr. Rosenberg asked his questions. I answered them all in half-truths, or at least provide an answer I thought he wanted to hear. Then I rescheduled with his assistant and drove back to my apartment. I spent the rest of the afternoon watching YouTube videos of surfing and researching the top-rated beaches to catch a wave. That night, I laid in bed with the thoughts of palm trees and pristine waters. I imagined the distant sloshing of the tide and faint bird calls that serenaded the beach. Closing my eyes, I could feel the warmth caressing my body, lulling me into a peaceful sleep. I was back at work. Behind my desk, the floor a white sandy beach. My office door opened as small waves lapped through it from down the hall. On the windowsill, a dark-rumped petrel sat grooming its wing. The smell of salt water mingled with the stench of burnt plastic and metal. Unease began to build, starting in the pits of my bowels and extending up through my chest. The faint sound of footsteps plodding through the water from down the hallway. Each uncoordinated step growing louder as it approached, each step ushering in a profound sense of despair. From the doorway, Stanley emerged hunched over, wearing the same meticulously tailored pinstripe suit he had worn the last day I saw him. his face charred and twisted, fatty sinew bulging beneath the jawline, gumless teeth scorched and neutral gray pressed into his sinister smile. He takes a step closer, and I instinctively recoiled, my back pressing against the cold, unforgiving wall. His movements become more deliberate, almost languid, as if he knows that fear has already taken hold of me. Every motion made radiated with pain until he sat down in the chair in front of my desk. Hollow orbital sockets lock onto me with a predatory focus. Even without eyes, I can feel the weight of his gaze, as if he's dissecting me, pulling me apart piece by piece until he reached my soul. Wet coughing.
Where do you think?
He paused, coughing again.
You're going?
He finished between blackened teeth and cooked gums. I need to heal. I need to...
Forget?
His voice was laden with fluid. I can't keep going on like this. You're dead and I'm alive.
My eyes popped from the fire, but I can still see you, Andrew. You're trying to run away.
You're dead. You're dead. You're dead! I yelled, pressing myself into the corner of my office. Stanley leaned into the chair, emitting a wet tearing sound as a dark stain grew across the breast pocket of his suit jacket.
Don't go, Andrew. God knows I'm awful, but there's something terrible waiting for you if you go. It's been waiting for a long time. Centuries. It just needs a kickstart. A little juice and...
I watched as bellowing flames started to flicker up from Stanley's collar until it engulfed his body in red and orange hues. The fire surging upwards, reaching the ceiling as he sat motionless, now holding a gas canister in his lap. This is how it always ended. The fire melting the plastic container, fumes pressing against the seals, the inferno reaching its peak, and just as the gas ignited, I shot forward in bed, drenched in sweat. I sat breathing hard in the darkness of my bedroom, my mind still fresh with the nightmare. I rolled out of bed, letting my feet touch the cool hardwood as I switched the lamp on. There would be no more sleep for tonight. Taking a deep breath, I retrieved the tablet from the bedside table, touching the screen and bringing it to life. I scrolled through the applications, finding the cryptocurrency icon and entering my password. The home screen displayed the account balance of $32,186,042. With another swipe of my finger, I exited the digital wallet and brought up a travel agency. "Fuck you, Stanley," I said, ordering a first-class ticket to Hawaii. 2 days and one 13-hour flight later, I touched down in Honolulu International Airport. From the moment I stepped off the plane, I felt invigorated. The blue sky glowed with a majestic intensity as large white puffy clouds drifted aimlessly. The humid heat felt good against my skin, a welcoming embrace from the island. It was a paradise in every form, beauty that extended beyond any video I'd watched or any article I'd read. I spent the entire ride to the resort gazing out at Mamala Bay and the various cocktail bars and restaurants that lined Kalakua Avenue. There was an energy in the air, a feeling of excitement mixed with wonder as people walked and biked along the cobblestone sidewalk shaded by lulu palms. Como mai, brah?" the driver asked as he looked back in the rearview mirror. Excuse me, what? The driver laughed to himself before replying. "Yeah, brother, you're new to the island. I know some premium places to grind. Maybe knock back a few green bottles and go on holo holo." "Do you know anyone that teaches surfing?" I asked. "This whole island is surfing, but I hook you up, brah. I send you to Sweet Lily. She's a kama'aina, brother. Been here for a long time," the driver said as he took a business card from the dashboard and handed it to me. The card was old and faded, with the picture of a young brunette dressed in a black wetsuit. At the top of the card in bold metallic letters, "Professional Surf Lessons by Lily." "She's howly like you. Be good fit, brother." We turned into the resort, where the driver parked in front of the entrance. A well-dressed valet opened my door, directing me to the front lobby, while another retrieved my bags from the trunk. I walked inside, admiring the marble floors and accented lighting that dotted the walls. The resort was truly lavish in all manners, attesting to its 5-star rating. After getting settled in, I took the rest of the day to recuperate from the flight, spending most of my time lounging by the resort's infinity pool overlooking Cajillo Beach. The smell of salt water and sunscreen permeated the air as Bob Marley played from the Cabana Bar speakers. I sipped the mojito, relishing the taste of mint and muddled strawberry. The trip was a good idea, a welcomed respite from the anxiety and stress I'd been dealing with. Leaning back into the pool recliner, the weight of the world dripped away. I took another sip before setting the drink down and closing my eyes. The warmth of the day radiated over my body as I inhaled through my nose, holding the air for a few seconds and releasing it through my mouth. My heart slowed as I repeated the breathing technique, allowing a pleasant tingling sensation to wash over my body. Then, the familiar chemical smell of gasoline stung my nostrils. The peaceful warmth quickly replaced by a searing heat that bore down on me as a deep, raspy voice spoke.
You sure you don't want another drink, Andrew?
Sir, would you care for another drink? A surge of panic jolted me awake, my arm flying into the air, knocking the table over and shattering the empty glass. Before me, a teenaged girl stood visibly shaken by my sudden response. An elderly couple gawked from inside the pool, mumbling something about not handling my liquor. I sat up from the pool recliner, surveying the glass that littered the travertine tile. I'm sorry. You startled me. Jesus, I was in paradise, and I couldn't even relax by a pool without having an episode. I knelt and began picking the shards of glass up while the stunned girl continued to look on.
No need for that, boss man,
an older Polynesian man said as he started sweeping the glass up using a broom. The young girl took this cue to return to the cabana bar, while the elderly couple floated further down to the edge of the pool.
You serve in the military?
The man asked. No, I'm a lawyer. Why? The man swept the last remaining pieces of glass into a neat pile before looking back up to me.
My son, he was in the Marines. Did a few tours in Iraq. Came home with that same look you have, like he was always waiting on the worst to happen.
I nodded my head, taking a second before responding. How is he, your son?
He's good. Runs an HVAC business in Kanaohe. He has 2 sons of his own now.
I sat back down on the pool recliner, studying the man as he continued to sweep the tile.
You know, my son had a lot of ghosts when he came back. This island, it helped him to let go of those ghosts. It can do the same for you. It's okay to let go.
I wanted nothing more than to let go, to be free. Was I expected to live this way for the rest of my life? Standing, I thanked the man before walking back to my room. That night I tossed and turned with the echo of the man's words swirling in my dreams. The flames were still there, the smell of fuel and charred flesh that grimaced back at me within the darkness. Then I was sinking beneath the ocean, my nightmares ebbing and flowing to the rhythm of waves that crashed above me. A vast, dark chasm that existed before God had created heaven and brought light to this world, and something lurked within. 2. Dawn emerged from the ocean, reaching upward to the sky in brilliant orange and yellow hues. The beach was quiet except for the wailing of birds that hunted fish in the morning horizon. I strolled down Kalakua Avenue in search of Lily's surf shop. I was sure it was too early to be open, but the beauty of a Hawaiian sunrise was a perfect payoff. The morning air was cool, a welcoming contrast to the humid heat from yesterday. I took a few alleys through the city until I came to the address on the card. It was a small stucco building with a sun-faded surf shop sign in the window. From the looks of things, the shop seemed to be more of an afterthought than an actual functioning store. I turned to go back, certain the location was out of business, when a female voice called out from behind me. Hey, wait, I'm open! The voice belonged to a petite woman wearing a wetsuit and carrying a surfboard that was almost 3 times as big as she was. Her breathing was labored, indicating she had spotted me and ran to get my attention. "Lily?" I asked. The woman propped the board against the shop, taking a few breaths before responding. "Sorry about that. Went out on a dawn patrol, you know." "Sure, I guess," I said, not really understanding what a dawn patrol was. The woman's face was sun-kissed with freckles and her bottom lip chapped. Her green eyes pierced through the brown bangs of hair that flowed in the morning breeze. She was extremely toned, with muscular shoulders and arms that made her look like a CrossFit athlete. "Hey, brah, you still with me?" Lily said, snapping me back to reality. A tinge of embarrassment ran through my head as I looked at the shop, trying to find the words. "You wanna check out my quiver?" Lily asked. I would like to talk to you about lessons, surf lessons." "Cool, let me open," Lily said, walking past me and retrieving a key hidden underneath a conch shell. I looked around as she stepped through the door, motioning me to follow. The inside was a hodgepodge of swimming gear and other beach supplies that seemed to fight for space in the tight confines of the shop. On the far wall, surfboards sat stacked together, while behind the front desk, a pristine collection of boards was proudly displayed on a rack. I surveyed the small shop, which would send any person suffering from OCD into a clinical coma. "I do hour group sessions if there's enough people for 125. That includes board rental." "How many people do you have today?" Lily turned on a monitor and clicked a few buttons. "So far, no one, but I can put you on the list, and if we get 3 more, we'll do a session," Lily replied. "And if you don't get enough people?" "I can do private lessons, but that'll run you 200 even." "How much to hire you for the next 3 days?" I asked. This seemed to catch Lily off guard as she backed away from the monitor. "Listen, you're not trying to rent a girlfriend, are ya?" Lily said, clearly confused by the proposition. I laughed, shaking my head. No, I mean, you're easy on the eyes, but I'm just looking for lessons." Lily seemed to mull over the offer, exhaling deeply before responding. "Fuck it. Let's say 800 a day. That's me in your face from 8 till 4. Half up front, of course. You start giving me bad vibes or decide surfing isn't your calling, no refunds." I took a second running the math in my head. The price didn't concern me, and if I was being honest, it was far less than what I expected. "My name is Andrew," I said, holding out my hand. "Nice to meet you, Andrew," she said, taking it. The moment was interrupted when a shirtless Polynesian man entered the shop behind me. The man was old, his skin weathered and adorned with faded tribal tattoos. "Aloha, Lily," the man said as he propped the front door open, bringing in a longboard. "Aloha, Jimmy. What you bring me today?" Lily said with a smile. "Been working on this one all night. Pity it's on an old longboard, but I think it gives some character." The old man weaved through the shop with surfboard in hand, carefully passing me until he was behind the counter. Lily cleared a spot as he sat the board down and stepped back, admiring his work. "Came to me in a nightmare," Jimmy said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Lily gazed over the board with genuine astonishment. "You did this all last night?" "Once I woke, I couldn't stop. I was sanding and carving like a man possessed by the devil." I walked to the counter as both Jimmy and Lily continued to admire the board, my heart seizing with panic the moment I recognized the pinstripe suit. It was Stanley, only his face was hidden by intricately carved flames that engulfed the entirety of the canvas. The artwork was beyond realistic. The fire seemed to ripple under the incandescent lights of the store. A bead of perspiration ran down my face as heat radiated outward from the board. "How much?" I said, catching Lily and Jimmy by surprise. Jimmy rubbed the back of his neck for a moment before responding. Don't know. I mean, something magical about it." "How's 3,000? Lily looked at Jimmy, her mouth wide with disbelief before turning back to me. "Chill out, bruh. You've never surfed," she said. "You brought it here to sell. I have money and I want it." Jimmy touched the board, contemplating my words. You know of Tutu Pele? He asked. Tutu... what? I responded, confused by the questions. Madame Pele, goddess of fire, creator of all this Anna. She both creator and destroyer. Still perplexed, I walked closer to the counter, the heat from the longboard growing stronger. What does this have to do with anything? I asked. Something brought you here. Maybe fire chase you away from home and bring you here? You knows, fire breathes more fire. I don't know what that means, but I got money in my pocket with your name on it. Jimmy ran his hand across the smooth wood grain of the board. Seems like this board already belonged to you. I can't stand in the way of that. Can't take no money for it either. Take it. What? You're just giving me the board? A genuine look of disbelief ran across Lily's face as Jimmy pushed the longboard to me. I didn't know what to think. The board was beautiful, worth a small fortune. And here it was being given to me without so much as an IOU. I reached for the board, my hands hesitating for a moment before touching the cool, slick wood. The board's made from koa. Can't get more original than that, brother, Jimmy said, pointing to the dark grain lines of the polished wood. Are you fucking crazy? Lily hissed at Jimmy. Jimmy held up his hand, resolute in his decision. I pulled the longboard from the counter, feeling the weight within my arms as I cradled it close to my body. Faint waves of energy flowed from it, causing the hairs on my arms to stand up. Perhaps the same energy had guided Jimmy's hands in its creation. The feeling of panic I had when seeing the board was now gone, replaced with a sense of power and a magnetic draw to the ocean. My job's done here, Jimmy said, snapping me out of the trance I was in. Lily stared in disbelief, as if waiting for someone to declare the entire conversation an elaborate prank. Jimmy walked from behind the counter, stopping briefly beside me to look at the board, and then back to me. Whatever you're getting into, be sure to keep her safe, Jimmy said, cocking his head back towards Lily. Caressing the longboard, I met his gaze, nodding in agreement. Jimmy accepted the silent confirmation and walked out of the shop, leaving Lily and I awestruck by what had just occurred. What the fuck was that? Lily said, breaking the silence. I don't know, but I still want to learn to surf. Lily leaned back against the counter, licking her bottom chapped lip while contemplating what to do next. I know we agreed on $800 a day, but I'll pay you $3,000, I said. Lily shook her head. Nah, brah, a deal's a deal. Now let's get you suited up and out on the beach. 3. I laid on top of the longboard, swimming my arms as Lily had instructed, then posting my hands below my chest. I pressed down on the board, lifting into a push-up position. My back leg slid forward, opposite my knee. Then, without moving my hands, I brought my front leg forward until I was crouching. Taking a deep breath, I stood tall, careful to focus my eyes on the palm tree in front of me. Better, but keep your knees bent when you stand, Lily instructed. I wiped my sweat from my forehead, laying back down on the board to repeat the drill. We spent the previous day going over the basic positions of surfing, and today would be the first day in the water. What do you do if you wipe out? Lily asked. I pushed up on the board, pausing to answer. Jump free from the board, feet down, and cover my head with my hands. Correct. And what do we do on the way back up? One hand up to the surface, I said. That's right. I repeated the steps, being sure to lift my head as I went into the kneeling position. Then standing, I kept my knees bent and relaxed, looking forward. Okay, there's only so much I can teach you on land. We're gonna catch some small waves on the reef break. Nothing crazy, but it'll give you the chance to practice your pop-up. You get into any trouble, don't panic. I'll be close by. Now, grab your board and follow me. We made our way up several grassy hills until reaching a trodden path that led to the white sandy beach. Lily stopped momentarily to survey the ocean before turning back to me. Always do a check before you get in the water. Look for things like rocks and shallow spots where the reef might be. Pay special attention to the current and other surfers that might be in the area. You want to avoid fucking up someone's wave. Remember, you don't know shit, so etiquette goes a long way. One more thing. Make sure your leash is attached to your board. I nodded as she turned back to the ocean and started trekking down to the water. A mixture of nerves and excitement ran through me as we reached the beach. At the water's edge, Lily stuffed the front of the board into the pit of her arm, allowing the rest to drag behind her. Following her lead, I did the same, while keeping my space as we both walked deeper into the surf. Once up to our waist, we climbed onto our boards and began paddling. Ahead of us, a wave started to build. "Push through or turtle!" Lily shouted as she pushed up onto her board with her hands, lifting her head and chest high and allowing the nose to slice through the wave. I grabbed the sides of my board, rolling over until I was submerged with the bottom of my board facing the sky. The surge of the wave pushed the board downward, quickly passing over me. With the wave now gone, I rolled back over, continuing to paddle. Once past the breakers, Lily stopped and sat on top of her board. I paddled up, aligning myself to her and looking back to the beach. By my estimates, we were now at least 300 yards from the shoreline. "Shit!" Lily exclaimed with a look of concern on her face. A group of 3 teenage surfers were paddling towards us. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Locals, and not the welcoming type." I watched as the 3 teens glided through the water with practiced skill. "Should we go somewhere else?" "Fuck that, this is our spot. Just let me do the talking." The 3 teens were only 5 feet away when they stopped and sat on top of their boards to face us. There was silence as the trio seemed to size me up. The first boy in the lead brushed his long black hair out of his face before focusing on Lily. "Hey, bitch, I told you not to be out here." "Shut the fuck up, Hema. I got just as much right to surf here than any of ya," Lily hissed. A second boy with chipped sunglasses pounded his chest. "This beach is sacred, so pack the fuck up before we roll ya." Lily scoffed at the second boy. "Davy, you're fucking Filipino." "I ain't hearing that shit," Davy shouted back, splashing water at us.
A white bitch called you out, homie.
A skinny kid with a bowl haircut laughed. "Hey, shut the fuck up, Lono," Hema growled. Lono instantly stopped laughing. Hema turned back to face us, a look of hate plastered across his face. "You and this fucking white boy need to leave." "Your Tutu Kane gave this Howley a board to surf with." "Bullshit, he wouldn't give no Howley a board." Lily shifted forward and pointed a finger at my board. "Not true, brah. Take a look. That's his sign, right?" I looked down at the board where a small J was carved in the front with decorated palm leaves. Hema posted up on his board, glaring down at the carved signature. "You're Jamie's grandson?" I asked. Lily shot me a look of disdain, her eyes telling me to shut up.
Your grandpa's selling out, homie,"
Lono laughed.
"Shit, brah. Your grandpa's practically in the KKK now,"
Davy said, fist-bumping Lono. Hema grew quiet, his face scrunching up with rage. He hung his head low, looking back at Davy, and with one quick motion, he punched him in the face. The blow connected with Davy's nose, causing his sunglasses to fly off and a torrent of blood to start dripping from both nostrils. "You want to talk more shit?" Hema said, glaring at Davy and then back towards Lono. "That's enough, Hema. You got blood in the water now. It's not good for any of us," Lily said. Blood from Davy's nose flowed freely onto his board, mixing with the ocean water.
Why you gotta hit me like that, bro?"
Davy said, trying to conceal the tears that were streaming down his cheeks. Glancing away from Davy, I looked to the beach, which was now becoming smaller by the second. "Lily, should we be this far out?" Lily turned away from the trio, her eyes growing wide at the revelation that we were drifting away from the shore at an alarming speed. "Fuck, must be a rip current. We need to swim to the side to get clear of it," she said, climbing down from her board and paddling. I could sense fear in her movements as I followed behind her. We swam parallel to the beach, our breathing becoming labored with each stroke. Glancing behind, I could see Hema closing the gap, while Lono and Davy both struggled to keep up. "Keep swimming!" Lily shouted out. Lungs burned and muscles ached as I swam harder. The shoreline was now just a small speck, hardly visible. Lily came to an abrupt stop, her chest heaving through the wetsuit as she looked back to me and the teens. "Current's too strong. We gotta stop and let it finish pulling us out."
Fuck that,
Hema said, passing by us. Lono and Davy tried to keep up, but stopped a few yards ahead of us from exhaustion.
Hema, stop! You need to conserve your energy for the swim back,
Lily shouted. I climbed the surfboard, rolling to my back trying to catch my breath. How did we drift so far out without noticing? The beach had been a few hundred yards when I last looked, and now we were miles from any land. My thoughts raced as I recalled the tales of shipwreck survivors who were lost at sea. The unquenchable thirst they described. The feeling of isolation, and even more terrifying, the sharks. Hema returned to the group, a look of defeat evident on the teen's face. "We gotta stay calm. Sometimes the current will push you back towards the beach. Good news is, I don't think we're more than a few miles from shore," Lily said as she sat back on her board.
Fuck, homie, I'm supposed to go on a date with Tanisha tonight,
Lono exclaimed.
"Don't sweat it, man. Be a good story to tell her when we get back,"
Davy said. Hema shook his head in frustration.
"Are you two fucking—"
His words stalled as his eyes grew wide. A large black fin glided through the water and then dipped below the surface.
"Shark!"
shouted Davy. Lily reached out, pulling my board towards her.
"Everyone, pull together. The bigger we look, the better our chances."
Hema was the first to come up beside me, followed by Lono and Davy. Collectively, we searched for the shark beneath the smooth ripples of the water. There was nothing we could do but remain silent as the predator lurked beneath. Sweat dripped down my face as the sun bore down, the heat coming in inescapable waves. With no way to cool our bodies, dehydration would soon become a concern. By the look of the sun's position, it was just now midday, meaning we had several more hours before any relief. The unrelenting circumstance of our situation was becoming more evident by the moment. Choose your poison, shark chum or death by thirst. Lono stretched out on his board, covering his face with his arm, while Davy continued to watch the ocean. Unlike Lily and I, the three boys wore no wetsuit, leaving the flesh of their shoulders and backs exposed to the unforgiving sun. Lily plucked a hair and dropped it into the water, watching it float aimlessly. "We're out of the rip current." "That's great. Now we just need to know where to swim," I said, gesturing to the endless ocean that surrounded us. "Sun sets in the west, so that's west, and that must be east," Lily said, pointing towards the sky. "If we swim to the east, we might make it to land, but we could swim and just drift off course without a bearing to guide us." Davy turned to face us, his eyes darkened from the blow Hema had delivered earlier. "My old man told me that you can see the lights of the mainland miles away when it's dark. He also said you can use the stars if the sky is clear." "Your old man's a drunk," Lono quipped.
"Fuck you, fool. He's a fisherman."
Hema splashed water towards Lono and Davy.
"Both of you shut the fuck up."
"That's not a bad idea. If all else fails, we use the stars to get our bearings," I said. Lily looked back to me, her face red from the heat. "I guess we wait till dark then." 4. Dusk came, and with it, relief from the scorching sun. I sat on my board, head dizzy from the sweltering heat, as the sky turned shades of pink. My tongue swelled from the torrent of thirst as I tossed and turned, seeking comfort on the surfboard. Lily laid on her side asleep, her face covered by her long hair. Several times she's jerked and mumbled incoherently, her dreams becoming more vivid as she escaped deeper into her unconscious. I wondered what those dreams held. Was she comfortably back home sharing a story with a friend or lover? Maybe it was something more mundane, like grabbing a cold beer by a beachside restaurant. God, I'd kill for a cold beer. Then there was a sudden change in her breathing, as her body tensed up and began to tremble. She shuddered, rolling to her side to face me. I could see the scowl on her face as fear mounted inside. Her hand shot out towards the sky as she arched her back against the surfboard. She had escaped a nightmare in this world, only to be greeted by another in her slumber. I reached out, grabbing her wrist firmly and steadying myself on the longboard. She fought against my grip, pulling away violently. The nightmare was reaching its pinnacle as she continued to struggle. We were now precariously at the edge of our boards. Another sudden move would plunge us both into the sea below. "Lily, wake up!" My voice seeming to arouse the others as Hema called out, "Bro, she needs to chill or she's gonna attract the sharks." In an act of desperation, I opened my palm and smacked Lily across the face, the blow leaving a red welt across her cheeks. Lily's eyes fluttered open, staring back at me with the intensity of a silent scream. She pushed forward into my chest and began to cry. I held her for a few moments, allowing her to seek comfort. Davy paddled up behind her, cupping his hands to collect water. "Be cool, Waheen," he said, as he allowed the water to trickle down the back of Lily's neck. "It was horrible," Lily said as she pulled away. "It's okay. You were having a nightmare. It's not real," I said, brushing the hair from her sun-chafed face. "No, it was different. There was so much fire, and there was a man, and he knew you? He knew you, Andrew. He told me. He fucking told me that he was coming. But that's not the worst part. There's something else. Something big." I grabbed Lily by the shoulders, pulling her close. "This man, did he tell you his name?" Lily sunk back onto her board, turning her head to search the sea. "Relax, homie. She just wigging out. Too much sun on that bitch," Lono said as he splashed water onto his chest. "Stanley," Lily whispered. My blood ran cold at the mention of his name. All the warnings I had been given were now becoming a reality. The sane part of me struggled to find reason in her words, a belief that I could buy into. Some thread of logic that would explain everything. I was stupid in coming here, to learn of all things how to surf. Then again, I knew this moment was predestined to play out. I had just been given the illusion of free will. His name is Stanley McTavish. He was a lawyer that specialized in real estate. "What does he want with us?" Lily asked. "Stanley's my curse, and he's not too keen on letting me get away with what the law firm did to him." Lily wrapped her arms around herself. "You mean he caused this to happen to us?" "No, but somehow he knew about it. Even tried to warn me. Normally he's just a nightmare, but lately the dreams have been more lucid. I can smell him, hear his voice. It's like he's becoming real." "Andrew, what the fuck is going on?" There was a real estate broker that managed to steal 30 acres of land from a guy in prison. Long story short, some real weird shit went down. Like, people died. After all the bodies went cold, the feds investigated. That's when my law firm came in. "Get to the point, Andrew," Lily said with a tinge of resentment in her voice. The partners at the law firm started billing their hours against the property. Pretty soon, the 30 acres belonged to us. We invested heavily in developing the land, but the work crews started going missing, and the costs kept mounting. I mean, this had the possibility of ruining the firm. Then the senior partners got an idea. What if we could sell the property multiple times? "How is that even possible?" Lily asked. "It's not, at least not in the legal sense. You see, the senior partners needed to alter the original deed to make it look like it belonged to different people, and then we needed to make it look like the location had been subdivided. They went hard into this. I mean, the amount of forging and document duplication was uncanny. One thing they needed was a lawyer outside the firm to file the paperwork and make the sales. That's where Stanley entered the picture. Stanley had no idea of what was going on, but he was a go-getter, and within 3 months, he'd sold the same lot at least 4 times. The money was funneled into a digital wallet. "Damn, that's some American greed bullshit, homie," Lono laughed. A feeling of shame drifted over me as I thought about the next part of the story. After the money was transferred, the partners raised the alarm to the authorities. A short investigation found Stanley's name on everything. The only thing missing was a large portion of the money, but the feds thought they had enough to convict. Stanley fought tooth and nail, but his name was already becoming toxic. He lost his house, his ability to practice law, and then his wife and kids. But Stanley was smart. He knew what the firm had done. He just couldn't prove it. Seeing the writing on the wall, he walked into my office on a Thursday afternoon with 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline. He emptied one on himself, sits down with the other, and struck a match. "Oh my God," Lily said, holding her hand to her mouth. I could have said something. I could have warned him or went to the authorities, but the senior partners promised me a seat at the table. I watched them do it all. I may not have forged the documents, but I was just as guilty. In some ways, I think what I did was worse. I was the face he confided in. Now I can't shut my eyes without seeing him. The law firm keeps me happy because I know the truth, and they won't kill me because I have sole access to the digital wallet. "Fuck, bruh, how much you get?" Davey asked. 10 million before it was converted into Bitcoin during the crypto crash. It's tripled by now.
Fuck,
Lono said. Lily pushed her board away from me, her eyes holding a look of contempt. "So you ran away to Hawaii to start a new life?" It was more than an escape attempt. This is the first time I've told anyone outside the firm about what happened. It's also the first time I've felt some form of relief. If I survive this, I'll turn myself in and give up the firm. I'm tired of running, and it's time I face the consequences of my actions. The moment was interrupted as large bubbles began to bulge at the top of the surface in front of us. The bubbles bellowed into large tendrils of foam that skirted across the water. Then, a green jerry can popped to the surface, followed by 5 more in rapid succession. I had seen these cans 100 times in my nightmares. The same can Stanley had purchased at an army surplus store the day he lit himself on fire. I rubbed my eyes, expecting the cans to be a hallucination brought on by the stress of the day. But they were real in every detail, all the way down to the yellow stamped markings reading fuel only. How could this be? Was I losing my mind? I sat transfixed on the spot where the water continued to churn. An energy in the air. The same energy that I felt when I was in the surf shop. Only this time, more raw and powerful. Then a wooden casket rocketed up from the depths below. Sea foam cascaded over the cherry wood veneer, rippling in the twilight of the afternoon. "What the fuck is that?" Hema asked. Snapping out of the spell I was under, I turned to the others. You all see that?" Lily nodded her head, not looking away from the casket. "Bruh, this some voodoo shit," Davey said, pushing back on his board. "Andrew, what's happening?" Lily pleaded. I didn't know how to respond to her. All I could do was sit motionless, not taking my eyes off the nightmare that had just manifested itself into reality. An overwhelming sense of trepidation blanketed the group, causing Davey to paddle away. "Bro, come back!" Hema yelled. Davey paddled harder. Part of me wanted to join him, because I knew what the casket contained. But I was powerless to pursue him, content on watching the casket and jerry cans float forbiddingly in the restless ocean. Stanley's voice echoed inside my head.
Grow a conscience, Andrew?
"I'm done running, Stanley. Do what you will, but leave the others out of it. I won't have more blood on my hands."
You forget, Andrew. There's something else that wants you. But I won't let it have you.
Lily was now joining Hema as they beckoned Davy to turn back. "Storm!" Lono said, pointing towards a collection of ominous clouds quickly approaching us.
It's coming, Andrew.
Hema stood, balancing himself on the board and looking out towards the direction the storm was approaching. "That'll be on us any minute."
Look at the shade it's casting on the water,
Lono added. I looked out, seeing a thick black spot directly below the thunderclouds. "That's not shade." Hema dropped back down, a look of confusion on his face. "That's something under the water."
Maybe it's a submarine?
Lono said with fear in his voice. "Too big. That shadow must be 5 miles across. even more than that," I replied. The storm approached, the crack of thunder a low rumble in the distance, while large, twisting waterspouts crisscrossed the surface. Lily grabbed my hand, trembling. The storm was moving faster towards us, sending sheets of rain to beat down on us. More thunder erupted, louder and fiercer than before. Cool wind rippled across the water as darkness stretched out from above. The shadow concealed within the tempest glided through the water. Lightning blitzed across the sky, briefly illuminating the silhouette of a colossal creature with gargantuan tentacles.
"Emma, I want to go home,"
Lono cried, clutching his board tightly.
Stop looking at it!
Lily shouted, pulling my face to hers. My mind screamed to escape, but there was no salvation. Nowhere to swim, nowhere to seek shelter. My nightmares had been true, and now my only hope was to drown before the Titan could swallow me whole. Lily pressed her lips to mine, the kiss warm and salty. Her embrace anchoring my mind as the horror around me continued to unfold. I could hear Lono scream as something smashed down in the water next to us, my eyes opening just long enough to see him being yanked under the water by a large tentacle. Only a severed arm remained, still grasping the broken board he sat on. I squeezed my eyes shut, pulling Lily closer to me as the rain stung my cheeks. Then we were lifted and slammed under the water. My hold on Lily loosened as I struggled to swim to the surface. My muscles strained against the tumultuous current as the cord connecting me to my board guided my ascent. I emerged from the depths swimming to my board. Lily was doing the same, but holding on to Hema. The storm was now pressing down upon us, white-capped waves lifting us high into the sky. The casket rocked violently between us. The lid opened, and stained mort cloth flapping in the wind. A charred hand reached out, grabbing the side of the casket, causing my heart to skip a beat. Stanley sat up, his eyes ablaze with hatred. I was now face to face with my tormentor. Fear coursed through my veins like venom, stealing my breath away as I drifted in the ocean current. Lily was struggling to keep herself and Hema afloat. They were at least 20 yards away, and becoming more distant as the swells from the storm continued to howl. The rain was starting to let up as the eye of the storm approached, ushering in nightfall. Lightning flashed, revealing a chasm of giant teeth, each the size of a small boat, and in the center, a massive whirlpool began to suck everything into it. Through the crashing waves, I saw Davy as he abandoned his board and began swimming frantically away from the large behemoth. His face a morbid expression of dread and despair as he swam to break free from the whirlpool. I could feel the current getting stronger as we drifted precariously closer to the outside edges. Davy was now between one of the monstrous teeth, being whipped around and around as he circled the black, bottomless vortex. With one final burst of desperation, he lurched forward, fighting against the tide, only for his head to go under. An overpowering chemical smell permeated the air as gasoline seeped from the casket. More fuel containers emerged from the depths orbiting Stanley as he stood in his casket looking down at me. "I'm begging you, Stanley. I'll turn myself in and give up the firm. I just need a chance to make things right," I pleaded. For a moment, Stanley was whole. His body no longer burned, his face unburdened with vengeance as he looked at me with blue eyes. "My family, Andrew. If I let you live, you must promise to take care of them." "I swear it. I'll do whatever's in my power to make sure they're okay."
"There will be judgment when you die,"
Stanley said, as he turned to face the partially submerged Titan. Through the chaos, I could see Stanley's rage building into a manic fervor. Fire erupted from his sleeves and pants leg, igniting the fuel that floated on the water's surface. Hot, searing flames coursed through the tides, branching out across the ocean. The casket erupted into a fireball, reaching up into the dark, swirling clouds above. I swam across the flaming waters towards Lily and Hema, the chaotic tide rising and falling with increased ferocity. Waves adorned with fire rolled into one another, clashing into a crescendo of opposing elements. Clusters of fuel canisters exploded in the darkness, illuminating the Leviathan.
Andrew, the water's starting to boil,
shouted Lily as I closed the gap between us. My hands recoiled from the water as if touching a hot pan. Lily was right. The water was now scalding. I looked back instinctively, shielding my eyes, as Stanley burned white hot. The water around the casket turned into vaporous trails of steam. He was a reactor of pure vengeance radiating hate. But the flames were being drawn away from us and to the creature's bottomless gullet. The ocean seemed to exhale, withdrawing us from the whirlpool. The casket tilted backwards, being drawn up into a grand wave.
"Swim out!"
Lily shouted, plunging her feet to the scalding hot water and kicking. Hema cried in pain as he struggled to keep up. I followed, my hands and feet pumping through the blistering water. I pushed through the pain, stiff aching muscles begging for relief as I reached out, pushing Hema's board forward. With one last push, we cleared the wave as it began to crest with Stanley at the top. With a tremendous roar, the wave came crashing down towards the open maw of the creature. Stanley stood tall in the casket, surfing the wave as the hellish inferno plunged into the cavernous jaws of the creature. With one last glimpse, he soared like a missile straight down its throat. The creature revolted from the searing blaze. A bright phosphorus spot burned within. It rolled over, causing titanic waves in all directions. Tentacles whipped in the open air, lashing out in pain. Finally, the creature submerged under the water, attempting to snuff the fire out. We clung together, watching the two forces descend under the ocean. The bright spot that was Stanley growing fainter the deeper the creature submerged. The storm quickly dissipating into a clear, moonlit sky. Hema rolled onto his board, gasping for air, as Lily cradled her blistering hands.
"Is it over?"
Lily asked, breathing heavily. I surveyed the dark waters, still waiting for Stanley to reach out from the depths. But there was nothing but peaceful tranquility as the waters lapped against my board. "Lights!" Hema shouted. Hema was right. Bright, glorious lights of all colors shone bright in the distance. With a smile, I turned to Lily and Hema. "You two up for a swim?" Lily laughed, her face staring at the bright stars with tears streaming down her cheeks.
"No offense, Andrew, but I think I'm gonna have to charge you extra for this lesson."
Epilogue. We spent the next few days at Straub Emergency Hospital, recovering from dehydration and second-degree burns. There, I placed 2 phone calls. The first to the FBI regarding the law firm's transgressions. The second being to an offshore wealth management company regarded for their confidential practices. I've been in Hawaii for 2 months now, prepping for my own court hearing. The government offered me a plea deal in turn for my testimony against the firm. Instead of 30 years to life, I was looking at 5 years of probation. This meant I'd have to turn in the $10 million made during the fraud. I'd also lose my ability to practice law. The offshore account allowed me to wash the remaining $22 million. My lawyers tell me there's no way Uncle Sam can prove the funds even exist. Which is good because I'll need it to make good on a promise. In the next few days, Stanley's family will receive a $5 million life insurance payout. At least, that's what everyone will think. I'm sure they'll get further payouts as the money continues to grow. Jimmy was grateful for the safe return of his grandson. He's offered to do anything to make me feel at home on the island. The loss of Davy and Lono caused Hema to reflect on his future. From what Jimmy told me, the boy was talking about going to university, and had even received a full-paid scholarship from an unknown benefactor. As for Lily, our relationship has blossomed into something more romantic. It's going so well, we might need to move in together to cut down on the travel time to the beach. I'm thinking a small oceanfront villa might help. I'm sleeping now. No nightmares. In some ways, you can say I'm living the dream. I did wrong in my life, and for that, I'll be judged. But for now, I just want to live, and maybe surf a little.
that was one hot story. It's been great having you along for the evening, and I wish you safe travels. If you liked the story, be sure to subscribe for more terrifying tales. This is Jeramy Burke Miller wishing you a pleasant summer end. Good night, fellow listener.